and those members of the community in the gallery. If I could begin with a statement of acknowledgement. We acknowledge the traditional owners of this land in which we are meeting and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and to those from other communities who are here with us today. For they hold the memories, the tradition and the culture of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Item 3 on our agenda is a call for apologies or requests of leave of absence. We do have one apology from Councillor Watson tonight. He is taking a much deserved break. Is there any other request for leave of absence? No? Thank you. Item 4 is declarations under Acts, regulations, codes or local laws. Councillors, we have an item tonight, 8.4, that is recommended that we defer this item. Officer Scully, do we need to make that motion now or do that at the time of the item? Okay, councillors, if you're happy to have that item withdrawn, can I have someone move that item 8.4 be withdrawn? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Somebody else second it. Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Does anybody need to speak against that withdrawal? If not, councillors, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Any other declarations under? No. Nope. Item 5 is declarations by councillors of any conflict of interest. Is there any? I don't think there is any this evening. That will be one of the first. Item 6 is confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. The recommendation to accept those from the September meeting is there. Can I have someone move that? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Did anybody wish to speak to that or speak against it? If not, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 7 is delegates report, of which there is nil. Councillors, I'll have one for you next month after returning on the weekend from the MAV conference. Item 8 is the officers' report for determination. Item 8.1 is the 2018-2019 financial results and estimated rebudgets. Councillors, there is a recommendation from staff on page 14. Can I have someone either move this or move an alternate motion? Anyone? Would someone like to move this? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Just checking you're all awake. Would anybody else like to second that? Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Mitchell, did you wish to talk to this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's always very nice when we have a small surplus from the previous year, and it's very pleasurable that we're able to move $1.04 million from the last year's budget to the current budget. The money's not necessarily allocated at this point, but there are many deserving projects out there that it could be and will be discussed further at future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anybody else wish to speak to this report? Yeah, Councillor Hall.
Yep. Look, it's nice to have a surplus. It's better to have a surplus than it being in the negative territory. But it's pretty hard, I suppose, to get a budget right on the money. So there's always going to be, you know, it's better to be a little bit over than not have enough. So as Councillor Brian Mitchell said, this will go into the next year's budget and we'll discuss where it is allocated. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's pretty good to get a result like this broadly. To get a surplus, as Councillor Hall said, it's far better than ending up in the other side of the ledger. There's a couple of things that come out of the paperwork this year. One of the things I note, the low figure of $148,923 in the developer contributions transfers over the year. In a generous calculation of, say, $900 per lot created, that suggested about 165 lots were created, or perhaps some developers have been a bit slow in making their payments, so that number might be a bit rubbery. But if only 165 lots have been created and the long-term average number of lots taken up each year is around about 320 to 420, or perhaps a little higher in good years, then perhaps we've got a looming land supply issue to deal with. This might also suggest that we've got some problems on the horizon in relation to residential land costs, which may be an emerging issue we probably need to have a closer look at.
Thank you. Did you want to make comment on any of that? Did you have any response to that commentary?
Yeah, we'll take that on notice, councillor, and provide some information.
It's a good point you raise. Any other comments? Yeah, councillor Lowe.
I'll probably echo my fellow councillors' words in the sense that it's obviously great to come out in the black, and when you are forecasting, it's very difficult to forecast an actual budget. So erring on the side of caution is really great. Just picking up and highlighting the annual report, there's a few good pages in here to read for anybody that wants to read them. And I'll draw attention to page 8, our debt levels over the past 10 years. Obviously, we've had no new borrowings and none forecast into the future too. So that continues to fall, which is a great sign for Wodonga. I also want to highlight logic. And the reason why I want to highlight logic is because with surpluses and land sales, I'd be urging my fellow councillors to have a look at reinvesting out there. Logic, I think, cost 47 million originally, and I think it's down to 4.1 owing on it. So, and there's about 44 million, I think, off the top of land sales still to go out there. And some of this land needs to have the infrastructure built in, which is a cost. But the return on that investment will far outweigh that cost, is obviously showing already. We're one of the fortunate communities that actually has such a land bank available to us. And what that does is it's a full commercial investment out there. And the best way to put downward pressure on rates is through commercial rating. So that gives you the biggest increase, let alone the jobs and that it creates out there. Also want to highlight just an image actually on page 17, and it's just our community makeup. And there's 21.8% of our people who volunteer in our community. And I think that's a massive number, and it's also the reason why we all want to live in our community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Lowe. We will come to adopting the annual report a little bit later on, but you're absolutely spot on with all of those things you've just said around population and changes. Did anybody else want to say anything else? Councillor Mitchell, did you need to say anything else for close? No, councillors, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 8.2 is the September 2019 quarterly and monthly finance report. The recommendation is on page 29. Councillors, it's not just to accept that, but also to look at the notional surplus and reserves of how they may be allocated into the future so that they are made available. Councillors, do I have someone? Yep. Yes, you can.
I'd like to move that the September 2019 quarterly and monthly finance report be received and noted. Point 2, that the 1.048 million surplus from 2018-19 be held for rebudgeting in 2021, or, subject to further council resolution, be used for opportunities that may arise this financial year, and that the 400,000 not be drawn from the cash reserve for expenditure on the library project. 3, that in light of the expectation that the library project will exceed the budget by up to 1.4 million, the library project be suspended pending a cost review and consideration of options to adjust the project to more clearly reflect the budget. And 4, that the demolition of the existing library building not commence pending the outcome of the review.
Thank you, councillor Mildren. We do have a policy of no surprises, so it would have been good to receive that today. Councillors, is there anybody who wishes to second that motion?
I'll second that motion for the debate purposes tonight.
Councillor, floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do this, it's not because the library project's not a good project. It is a good project, and we need to deal with it in the appropriate manner. But there are just so many things that are at best unknown and perhaps could be described as speculative in regard to how we cut the cloth and how we manage the project costs. The projects, we haven't turned aside, and in effect, we're potentially $1.4 million over budget before we even turn the first sod. We know that projects like this often run over budget and need additional money, towards the end of the project. And if we add that into the equation here, then this is becoming an exceptionally expensive project. If you look at the project from the point of view of what this means, the 1.4 mil additional money into this is a 12.3% increase on the original proposed budget, which is a pretty significant amount. And I'm not saying we shouldn't end up doing this, but I'm saying let's take a step back, take a breath, review this process, review the things that we might be able to do to cut the cloth to fit the budget that we've got, and take just a bit of time, take a breath and be responsible, or a little more responsible in the way we go about it. I think fiscal responsibility in projects like this can be too easily let slip through the net. And I think this is an occasion where we really need to look at making things fit the cloth that we've got. I know we've got applications for grant funds in. There is no guarantee that we're going to get that. We've been fortunate enough to already get a significant number of millions of dollars contribution from state government to this project. So I don't think we can rely on those additional funds. It'd be absolutely wonderful if we get it, but I don't think we can, at this point in the process, rely on that money coming. And I think, given the circumstances, we should take a breath and step back and just review what's going on with it. I also have one question, I think. In respect to the $400,000, can somebody tell me which reserve fund that's going to be drawn out of if it gets approved?
Potentially from our Community Facilities Reserve.
Is that the Developer Contributions Fund, or is that a different?
Yeah, no, it's from developer contributions for, we've got some monies in the reserve there that may be able to be allocated to that project.
Have we had an evaluation done on need, nexus, equity and accountability to make sure that those funds can actually be distributed to a project like this?
So not only have we got developer contributions funds, but we've got unallocated cash funds there that we potentially, we have a small buffer that we carry. So that's available for any, if there isn't sufficient developer contributions that are able to be allocated, but that investigation will be undertaken if we determine that we need those funds.
Look, I'm very supportive of this project. I think once it's completed, it'll really add to our CBD and to the community. It's going to be a real asset. But having said that, whilst I agree we should roll over the surplus, I do not support at this stage the allocation of the extra 400 coming from the cash reserves. I want to have a look at and wait and see whether we get this funding that we are to apply or we have applied for from the Living Library Fund. That's state government, that it's part of their projects. So until that gets approved, I'm a little bit unsure whether we should go forward before we tick all the boxes. I've always been a person that likes to have everything in place before we move forward. Also, the fact is, if we don't get that funding, we're looking at an extra 1.4 million on top of the 6 million we've already allocated. So we're looking at 7.4 million, which is, it's a large ask for the community. It's going to be a great asset, but I think maybe we need to have a look. If we don't get that funding, step back, as Councillor Milton has said, have a look at maybe rescoping some of it to bring it back in line with the budget allocation that we have allocated, and I think the community probably would expect us to do that. It's just been due diligence on the side of being careful with their money. You know, everyone has to work under a budget. People's wages aren't going up very high at the moment, and our rates are on the higher side. So, yeah, just being cautious.
Absolutely don't support Councillor Mildren's motion, and it just baffles me that we've had so many discussions about this and why you would just at the 11th hour bring something so big as put this massive priority project on hold just is baffling. As I said, this is a priority project, and there was a really interesting article in The Age, and I'll send this around to all councillors. I want to read out a few stats from this. So this talks about the importance of libraries in Australia. So all these are Australian stats here. The public library is our most valued cultural institution. In July 2018, so that's just in 1 month, over 7.6 million people visited Australian libraries. And about 6.7 went to art galleries, 6.3 went to plays. So our libraries are such an important place, particularly if we think about it now in terms of really nice, attractive indoor spaces. That can be hard to access, you know, so even if you want to go to a cafe, that costs money to get the coffee. But of course, everything in our library is free. Back when the internet arrived, there were certainly planners who actually started planning for a future without libraries, because I thought, well, libraries won't exist in a future where we've got the internet, we'll all just be at home on our phones. But really the opposite happened. And our connection with books and our connection with other people has just grown even more. And probably in the age of the internet, we need that connection with people even more. It's interesting in parallel, say, in the States, where the Trump administration has actually proposed to cut pretty much all funding to public libraries. In the UK, funding cuts by the Conservative government have seen about 800 libraries closed or moved to volunteers. But interestingly, in Australia, that's the total opposite. So here in Australia, our total government expenditure on libraries has risen to more than 1.2 billion a year, which is about $50 per person. So our state governments and our federal governments completely see in Australia we love our libraries. And I would say to councillors to go and I would be in our library probably once a week. We run some fantastic programs, and you can see also that it is in such a dire need for not only an upgrade but a complete whole new library and gallery space. So many of our community use it. With those stats, they were saying the interesting thing is the return rate. So say if you go and see a play, go to the theatre, you might go back once that year. But people visiting the library go back a minimum 3 times, normally 10 times a year. So that return rate is epic for such an amazing community facility.
I'll start with foreshadowing the motion if it fails to get up, because I'll be voting against it tonight. Because I want to echo Councillor Bennett's words around connection with people. Yes, it's a major project, and yes, it's a cost to the community, but she commented around connection with people, and places like the library become a hub for people. So then it's not only a hub, it's not only about reading books or jumping on the internet. It's a way to connect with other people, and that will show more than just that has mental health benefits and so on that go along with it. The reason why I'm not, one of many reasons why I'm not voting for Councillor Mildren's motion tonight is we do have a code of conduct and I suppose a respect between our other councillors to at least identify the fact that we're moving a motion. I know when I do that, I email all councillors out before I put the motion up. I'm not sure if it's a law or not, but it's just something I do out of respect. The reason why the officers made their recommendation is because they are being fiscally responsible. It's because they aren't relying on receiving the grant. So they're they're basically saying, if we don't get the grant, how can we continue to move this project forward? And they're doing the fiscally responsible thing as putting it into budget to make sure that we have it there so we can spend it and we're not drawing upon from anywhere else. So as far as being fiscally responsible and running your dot your I's and crossing your T's over a contract, I think that's exactly what council staff are doing, and I congratulate them for that. Thank you.
Before I hand back to you, Councillor Mildred, it was a shame that you weren't here last week for the discussion because there was a very robust and discussion around exactly why, through the CEO, our staff were putting this forward. And one of the components is absolutely about knowing and understanding the costs up front and being very clear and open with our community about that. I think part of the missing component in here is, and it certainly was part of the discussion, is what's being suggested tonight actually allows the staff to continue the tender process and allows them to, I think there's a fancy term, value engineer, go in and try and find further savings without actually impinging on the project, but doing things differently or doing things smarter. So that might be, for example, using a different building material to achieve the same result. And part of that is still yet to occur. But because of the timeframes, because of the impact that will be felt on our community, the discussion very much last week was around how we continue to move this forward where we do not impact our community any further than we have to. But yes, absolutely, we need to do this in a fiscally responsible way. We need to continue to lobby to receive the $750,000 from the Living Library Funds. We need to continue to work hard with, when we do appoint a tenderer, to actually go through those documents, make sure that we find any savings, as we do with every other tender, to make sure that we come in as close to the original budget as we can. Additionally, also some of the report that we received last week, Councillor Mildred, you didn't see, but it actually does contain a contingency, which is absolutely appropriate in a project of this size. But I think one of the big things to remember is, and Councillor Bennett, you are spot on, our library is full fit to bust. We are the busiest library in regional Victoria. In addition to that, so we got over 156,000 visitors to our library every year. And that number is increasing, can be up to 180,000. In addition to that, our art space is booked 3 years in advance. I've just had some Japanese visitors and I took them through the facility and they're incredibly impressed in our community orientation of our art space, how we engage our people, how it isn't just about a library and or art, it's actually about the community space. So for me, this means that we're saying we've made savings, community, here's how we may allocate them. We haven't seen that final figure yet, and that will occur through the tender process. It'll come back here for us to accept and adopt. So it's not the end of the line, but this is actually about saying, hang on, we actually already know that there might be some extra costs in there, and we need to earmark that money as we go in to the next budget process. And this is being really clear, and I hate the word, but transparent to our community to say, here's how we might use our community funds. So I won't be supporting your motion tonight, Councillor Mildred. Over to you for some close.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is not about whether or not we have a library or we need a library, or the library we've got is chock-a-block and needs to be expanded and we've got an expanding community. It's all about cutting a cloth and being fiscally responsible. It would be really interesting if the media were to run a poll to find out what the ratepayers thought about increasing the amount of money that we're allocating to the project. And additionally, I note, Madam Mayor, you referred to an additional contingency, which I wasn't aware of, being absent. Okay, so it's included in that amount, okay. But a contingency that nonetheless means that the cost of the project could be increased. I think we should be taking a breath and stepping back and making sure that we've got the money to do what we need to do. The other thing, it's interesting that Councillor Bennett refers to things in the library being free. simply untrue. The things in the library are not free. They are paid for, by and large, by ratepayer and taxpayer funds, by one means or another. And I find it really difficult to cope with this concept of things being free. It's a bit like the concept of, well, if we run out of money, we'll stick our hand back in the ratepayer's pocket. I just dislike that concept. It's this project.
Sorry, can I just point of order that one? Just to clarify, in terms of it's free for everyone, can I just clarify, because he's referring to a comment that I made, so can I just clarify that comment? By free, of course I don't mean it just comes out of nowhere. That's ridiculous. I mean, for the people accessing, all those particular programs, when people are needing a connection to other people, normally that has to cost money, but in our library you can go there and connect with other people and you don't have to pay money for that particular program. It's a no-brainer.
Thoroughly disagree with that point, but that's for the community to decide, not for us to debate here. It's not really. Essentially, this project should be happening. We should be doing it. We should be providing these services to the best ability that we can with fiscal responsibility. I argue that the position we're going into at the minute has so many uncertainties in it. There's things that we just don't know the outcomes of. We don't know what's going to happen to load up on top of it. We should be sitting and reviewing the cost of the project and looking to see if there's things that we can alter that doesn't change the value of the project in terms of its delivery of service, but changes the cost of the project in terms of its construction. And I think really which I'm trying to seek with this resolution is to go back to that.
Councillor, I'm just going to ask, Councillor Mildren, I'm actually just going to ask the CEO to make some clarity, because there's quite a few things that you've just said that are factually incorrect, and I just want to make sure on public record, and so you have a good understanding of those things that are actually included and what's being suggested here. Because you missed last week, I think there's a few things that potentially you aren't across, and it's important that the facts are out there, not misinformation. CEO.
Well, I guess all I'd like to say is that I think the council is being fiscally responsible. When you first float the idea of a substantially new building at a cost of in excess of $10 million, the time that was quite a long time ago. So market prices do vary. Obviously, council will go to tender, is in the process of tendering, and a key part of that is to get a very high quality outcome, but a value for money outcome. What we are realising is time from initial allocations of the budgets to those tender results coming in. The worst possible case scenario is one of a deficit right now. So we're suggesting a way to fill that gap. That is the worst case scenario. So we are confident of additional state funding, but we don't know that till the end of November. We're also sort of confident of trying to get some value engineering out of those tenders, and we've built into those tender prices a reasonable figure in terms of the contingency funding. Thank you. So all we wanted to do for our community and for our councillors was put the worst case scenario on in writing for you. Obviously, we will strive to reduce that figure, and we're confident it will get reduced. We just don't know the outcome of some of those state grant fundings at this stage.
Thank you. Just a few seconds more, because we're over time.
Madam Mayor, I think that was grossly unfair on the CEO to put him in that position, because everything he said reinforces what I've just said. It supports the fact that there's uncertainties. It didn't provide any factual contradictions to the things that I've said, and I'm quite disappointed that he was called in to do that. No.
Councillor, if you would like to conclude, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's pretty obvious where I'm coming from. I don't think I ever expected to get the numbers to get this across the line, but it needs to be put in the public arena. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, there is you're going to have to read it out again because nobody's got a copy of it. Please, Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That September 2019 quarterly and monthly finance report be received and noted. that the 1.048 million surplus from 2018/19 be held for rebudgeting in 2021 or subject to further council resolution used for opportunities that may arise this financial year, and that the 400,000 not be drawn from the cash reserves for expenditure on the library project, that in light of the expectation that the library project will exceed the budget by up to 1.4 million, the library project be suspended pending a cost review and consideration of options to adjust the project to more closely reflect the budget, that demolition of the existing library building not commence pending the review.
Thank you. Can you just make sure that, regardless of what happens, that actually gets to Kevin so that it can be put onto record? Councillors, that motion is there before us. All those in favour? Against? Motion is lost. Sure. Councillors, I'm not going to have Councillor Mildren read that out again if you, we don't need to. Councillors, all those in favour? Councillor Mildren, Councillor Hall. Against? Councillor Lowe, Councillor Bennett, Councillor Speedy and Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Lowe, you had an alternate motion. Can you? Thank you.
I do. I'm going to run with the officer's recommendation. Would you like me to read it out, or we can take it as read?
Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Lowe, the floor is yours.
I think we summarised a lot in the Councillor Mildren's motion, but I'll just quickly go to the point that I stated earlier on a different item number that I was all for putting surpluses and land sales away to reinvest into Logic. The reason why I'm voting in favour of this particular allocation tonight is because it's an emergency fund, essentially. This project, as was stated in the past denied motion, has been fully scoped on a worst case scenario, and we're just protecting the value of that and hoping to go back to the tenderers if need be to find out where we can make any cost savings to bring it into its original budget or near to that. And it's funny, Councillor Milton mentioned a community poll. I think if you did a community poll and told ratepayers that, there's going to be additional costs, no one likes an additional cost on anything, so it's kind of a loaded question. If you asked a footballer that we're going to spend money on the library, they're going to say no way. And if you're going to ask someone that goes to the library if we're going to spend money on a football oval, they're going to say no way. This is about providing for the whole community, not just part of the community. So I think those polls can be loaded with the question sometimes, as you often point out. Thank you.
I don't think anything to add. I just wanted to again clarify, I'm sure it's been said, but there seems to be people a bit confused about things. The original costing for this was done about 3 years ago, is that correct? So of course, that's correct. So of course things can change within that time.
Thank you, councillors. If nobody else has any other comment, then Councillor Lowe, did you want anything for close? No, councillors, I will put the motion, it's there as in page 29, the 2 points, point 1 and 2 of the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Right, thank you. Item 8.3. Tender for spray seal program 2018 to 2021. It's always interesting when we look that far out. Okay. The recommendation is there on page 40. Do I have someone move that recommendation or an alternate? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. A seconder? Thank you. Councillor Mildren, was that a hand up? Thank you. Councillor Bennett. No comments, Councillor Mildren? Any other councillors? No? Councillors, if there's no one who wishes to speak against this, let's put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.4, outdoor operations depot has been withdrawn and will be received at a future council meeting. Item 8.5, setting of Infringement penalty amounts. Councillors, there is a recommendation on page 50. Do I have someone move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Do I have someone second? Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Mitchell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This setting of infringement penalty amounts brings council more correctly in line with the Road Safety Act, and we'll see virtually no change to the current fine structure. It's just really it's just correcting the system to be in line with road safety. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, can I ask a question for clarification? In the motion, it says no change be made to the 2019-20 budget as a result of the proximity to the adopted fee. Does that mean that the amount that was adopted in the budget be held and that this motion doesn't take effect till after this budget period?
The amount in the adopted budget is a round figure of an estimate of what the fees are, given that the actual fee that was adopted in the budget was $82 and the fee proposed that brings us in line with the changes that have just come through in the Road Safety Act calculates out to $83, that annual estimated value that we have in our adopted budget, we're not changing because we're anticipating it would be very close. So,
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I don't think it answered the question. It's a practical application thing that I'm sort of testing. I know it's $1. I know it's a practical application thing, and I know it's only circa $1, or perhaps if you look at the technical amount, it's probably $82.61. But I guess I'm asking the question: the way this is worded? It seems to me that we're not going to apply the new rate for the current budget period. Or is this just about for budgeting purposes, and we are going to change the fee?
Yes, you're right in that second part of the comment, and we had a discussion around this last week when we looked at the draft. So there is no change to the budget line item, is my understanding, but we are actually going to enact the change as we're required to do by the legislation, but there's no material change to our budget. Does that give you some clarity? Yep, terrific. Was there any other commentary from anyone else? Did you want to close anything, Councillor Mitchell? Councillors, the motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 9.1 is the annual report for 2018-2019. Councillors, looks like that if you haven't seen it. Do I have someone to move that to be received and noted? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Thank you. Another councillor, can I have someone second that, please? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. You put your head up. You'll do that. Thank you for me. Councillor Bennett.
Just a couple of comments about this one. Great to see so many really fantastic pictures of local scenes and local people. On page 17, we've got our community profile. So interesting that our median age is 30. So we are a young community. I looked at last year's and the year before, and that was 35. So we're actually getting younger. Yeah. Also on that page, we have homes that have internet access is 81%. So again, that's 19% of our community don't have internet access at home. So when you think about critical infrastructure like the library and where people might actually access the internet, how critical that is, and suspending that would have huge ramifications. On page 49, we've got increased participation in the commercial waste streams. So when we had a look at our 3-bin system a little while ago, our residential rates are really, really good for this. In fact, our organics is one of the lowest contamination rates in Victoria, which is absolutely huge and probably should be front page of the paper. But this actually points out that 80 commercial properties have opted to go into the 3-bin system, which is fantastic because lots of our waste is actually coming from commercial. So great to see that they're jumping on board. Probably good to maybe catch up with those businesses and learn about what's enabling and a barrier for them so we can make sure more businesses go towards that. The one below that is further investigate ways for council to reduce its carbon footprint. We are doing some things towards this, but it would be great to have a bit more of a definitive goal in there, so we're accountable to our community. And this is a really good read. It says pretty much everything that council is doing. And I think even when I had a look back, I wanted to see the median age in previous years. This one reads so much better. It is so much easier to read this one, really clear. So it'll give you a really good idea what's going on with council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is my first involvement in an annual report, seeing that I started on council in January this year. But all I can say about it is that I'm proud to have been associated with it over the last 9 months. The council is doing a sterling job, and I think that we're only going to move forward from here. It's something that we all should be very proud of. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I remember last year I said, and I got reported that I thought it was a good read and recommended people to read it, and I got a bit canned for that in the media, but anyway. But it is, it's an important report because it does give out information, quite detailed information to our community, and it gives it a snapshot of what we've been doing for the year and, costings and what have you. So I will say it again, it's a good read, and get one and read it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think I need to add to the comments about the content, but what I will say is the presentation of this document is extraordinarily well done. The structure of it, you can find anything in the document pretty much anywhere you want to go and look for it. And the way it's been chronologically put in place is it's logical for people to actually just go and find what they want to see. So I think it's pretty well presented. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight one thing that I haven't already done so in the book already, and that is the introduction of our new CEO and his idea of our community forums. So, and those who aren't aware of them, we're having a community forum once a month where you're able to come in and ask councillors or staff, executive about anything you like, really. And we can give you an answer on the spot if we have the information, or we can get back to you. In addition to that, you'll be able to come in and listen to what's happening in our community. So we'll have staff or councillors presenting what's happening now and up and coming into the future. And I just wanted to, I think it's a really good program and an initiative to put in place, CEO. This is also how we mark him as well. So we'll continue to keep watch of him and see how he's going. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lowe. Before I hand back to Councillor Bennett, because this is a really important document, and I think Councillor Mitchell, you nailed it. This document actually belongs to the whole community, and so to see it continue to improve year on year, to become more legible, more readable and clearer for our community is fantastic. And I'm with you, Councillor Mildren. I think that this is the best laid out and the clearest and probably easiest to read for a layperson in our community. A couple of things I'd like to pick up in the document, because it is important as we continue to change so much and continue to see the successes that this city achieves, to actually just take a moment to reflect on some of those. We have delivered $17 million worth of capital items in this annual report in the summation. But in addition to that, we continue to deliver the maintenance to all of our assets. And I think that that's very, very important to note. Not only do we add additional new ones, but we continue to maintain. The financial results that are very clearly articulated in this document certainly show a very strong, stable and sustainable financial position. I think it's also worthy of note to reflect that during the process of the year that this document was put together, we had a new councillor come to the table, we have a new CEO come to the table. So to all of those staff in particular, thank you for continuing the works while we embedded a new CEO who's been here, we're nearly at 6-month mark? And to reflect on that. But I think again that this document absolutely highlights some fantastic results. We continue to see our borrowings go down by about 10% of their total year on year. That was a planned financial program by previous councils, and we continue to maintain it. And I think that is absolutely outstanding, particularly given the number of investments and changes that this community has needed and has been invested in by this council. We do see nearly 22% of our community volunteer, and that is staggering, and that is real testament to the people who make up our community. And when I'm out talking to government, one of the things that I'm the most proud of isn't the buildings, it's actually our people, because they make our city. Our resident numbers have just tipped over 41,500 people, and yes, we continue to get younger, which I think is a great achievement as well. But we do look at it, and we look at the people who are moving here, we look at the need on our schools and etc. So we continue to do that planning. So overall, there is terrific information in here. There is absolutely upfront and centre, very clearly, page 55 talks about councillors attending meetings, and councillors, I think we should all be incredibly proud of ourselves. We all work very hard on the side of, apart from being on council, and we have lives and busy lives and families, etc. And yet nearly everyone has turned up for every single meeting. Just occasionally we might get to have a holiday. There is also very clear and concise information around councillor expenses, where, for example, and I'll use mine, things that I attend are on behalf of council in the mayor's role to attend. So, for example, it does list that I attend some conferences. They are normally things like the MAV, which is actually part of the mayor's role and or a councillor's role, to go and be updated on things that are going to affect our legislation and the way we do business as council. So those are absolutely in there up front and centre. But again, CEO, through you, back to the team, thank you for producing such a great document for our community. And what I'm talking about is the clarity and the ease of information access. Councillors, back to Councillor Bennett, if you have anything to close.
Yeah, just 3 quick comments. As I spoke about and the Mayor spoke about, we are getting younger. So this is a bit of a advertisement, but we're a year out from elections. So maybe some young people, some more young people might want to put their hands up. Also, 2 things about gender. In the staff profile, we break things down by female and male. At the last council meeting I spoke about with the youth strategy, finally for the first time we actually acknowledge that there's more than 2 genders, so it'd be great going forward if we have some more options there. And lastly, on page 24, we talk about equal employment opportunities at council, and one of the things that we do is family violence leave is included in our enterprise agreement, which is fantastic, and it's great that council is being best practice in this area in particular.
Thanks, councillors. The motion is there before us to receive and adopt the annual report. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 9.2 is the Audit Committee meeting September 11, 2019, the summary of the minutes. I'm going to guess, Councillor Mitchell, would you like to move those, given you're our council rep? Thank you. Can I have someone second that? Councillor Hall, thank you. Councillor Mitchell, if you had any comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Audit Committee, as you will see from the annual report, is doing a fantastic job. They, I have said before, and I'll say again, that they are an eminent number of people that give their time for not a lot of money, and should be applauded for what they do. They make amazing recommendations to council, which council obviously follow, and it just makes for a greater, cleaner council, which is what we all want. Thank you.
Is there any councillor who needs to speak against this? Otherwise, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.1 is the planning report. It's there for information only. Is there any comments? 10.2 is the building report for September. Is there any comments? I had just one of note. On page 58, councillors, there's two sports pavilions listed there. They're actually the works of council. And it's just worthy of note, we received substantial funding towards those from the state government, actually just prior to the election, for women in sport and to upgrade, change facilities, etc. So great to see those underway. We did have the Minister here, Minister Symes, a couple of weeks ago, and she was pretty pleased to see those underway. So it'll be terrific to have those in place as we enter new sports seasons. Item 10.3 is the Competitive Services Report. Any comments? No? I think probably worthy of note for any of those people tuning in at home is it actually gives you a pretty good broad spectrum of all of the different line items that council invests in on our community's behalf, and that really sort of just details those. So definitely worth a look. Item 10.4 is Council Plan Progress Report, again for information only. Is there any comments? Nope. 10.5 is Assemblies of Councillors for information only. 10.6 is the Decisions Register. 11 is Notice of Motion, of which there is none. 12, Petition, of there is none. 13 is Council Seal, of which there is none. 14 is General Business. Now, Councillor Lowe, you've given a heads up that you have some. Councillor Bennett, you have some. Does anybody else have any general business? No? Councillor Lowe, did you want to go first? Very good.
Basically, just want to report back to the community what I've done over the last week is really what, and highlight a couple of things that's happening in our community. I went to the official opening of the Toolangatta to Shelley Rail Trail, and the northeast Victoria is attracting 3.8 million visitors to our region, spending 1.1 billion annually, and cycle tourism is one of the primary markets fueling that income. Wodonga is in a position to be the gateway to this, and so when I was invited up to the opening, I jumped at it. I didn't ride the 80 kilometres worth of trail from here to the opening. I decided to drive up there and ride in from a little bit closer. No, but that opening was brought about. We're talking about community volunteers before. Listen to this number: 7,987 hours of volunteer time. And there was donated timber, donated milling and equipment, and 7 bridges later to complete that rail trail journey. It was co-funded, so I must give a bit of a high five to both the state and federal government here. It was co-funded by VicGov through the Pick My Project. So Pick My Project is a funding arrangement where it's voted on, and the rail trail guys won that, and the Australian government put in money through the Better Building Regions Fund. But it's the partnerships between the rail trail advisory groups and Parklands, Albury, Wodonga is incredible. You know, what they've built along this journey, and it creates a great critical mass for our region. So the more things that we have to offer in our region, the more tourism we get, and the better we can capitalise on this. So a big thank you to that small army of volunteers for the Rail Trail Advisory Group, and there's a couple of localised clubs and there's a national one too, I think. I went to the Cancer Foundation AGM, which is a separate entity to the Trust, but they work collaboratively and complement each other. The Foundation is another one of those community organisations that need a small army, and they have a small army of volunteers. To summarise what they do, they improve cancer services in Albury-Wodonga region, provide financial assistance to cancer patients in financial difficulty, and research and provide advocacy to improve cancer care locally. They also help develop the C-bag and the C-plan to give to cancer patients once newly diagnosed. 96% of their income comes from donations and bequests. The guest speaker on that night was Dr. Chi Lee. And when they listed his credentials up on his PowerPoint presentation, you just sit there and go, wow. And then to hear that he's now working locally, you just think how lucky our region is. And then he mentioned when he was appointed, and it was 8 months ago. And I sat there stunned, actually, because I thought, how could we not have a palliative care specialist up until 8 months ago in our region? We've got a cancer hospital there, and they just didn't have a specialist within our region. Dr. Chile was appointed to the position of head palliative care physician at the Wodonga Health, and during his presentation, I learnt many things, but he showed a couple of slides up on the up on his board that really took me by surprise. Dr. Chi is bad about promoting compassionate communities model of end-of-life care. And he showed an image of a village, just a small village, and he said, you know, basically his motto there was, it takes a village to help a dying person. And then he showed another village that was a little bit bigger, it was more like a city, and he said the care sort of gets a little bit diluted in there because the village isn't coming together. And then he showed an image of a village, a city, and a river in between. And then he highlighted the cross-border anomalies that we have in our care system locally at the moment. He identified some gaps, and I'm going to read the gaps to you because I think it's very important. He's highlighted that our existing services are inadequate, inequitable, and inefficient. And it's because of limited resources, human and infrastructure. He calls it a postcode lottery, and that's because he gave an example of him being able to give care to someone, but depending on where they live on the border or within the region, he might not actually be able to walk into that part of the hospital to treat them. So depending on where they are in our health system, and I'm talking about Selangor regionally as well here, not just Wodonga Health. Funding and providing is one of the big gaps. And the key one here is some providers are burnt out. So we've had specialists and that are here, but their workload is so demanding. And you have a look and you read about it all the time and listen to any one of those nurses or doctors over there. They're all saying the same thing. They're full of care, but they're just under-resourced. And we're reactive rather than proactive. So we limit the capacity for non-clinical work is one of the gaps he highlights. He also highlighted that they're doing a lot of things right and leading a lot of things too. But I wanted to highlight that because I think it's our job as local government and our job in the community to highlight these things and help advocate for more funding and stop the restriction on some of this cross-border anomalies. The fact that we've got a palliative care specialist that can't go into a certain part of the hospital is quite poor, really. The hospital wasn't built for end-of-life care, but we need to do something about this because you're going to stick a cancer hospital next to a normal hospital. In one of those hospitals, we need to have end-of-life specialists and end-of-life care. So, the following week, yes, sorry, I went to a Murray Valley Centre AGM, and these guys have been working with people with disabilities for 50 odd years, and it's another organisation. Yes, they're a not-for-profit, but they have a lady there that's been there for 45 years, who's ran bingo for 45 years, and bingo is one of the major fundraisers for the AGM, and she's amazing. The CEO identified the challenges that we're facing with NDIS, and as you're all aware, I preface this again that I think the NDIS will be good, but it has its challenges, and obviously here's an organisation that's finding its challenges with this NDIS. I want to make a special note of RAMI, his inclusion. They partner with the Murray Valley Centre, and it's the Army are part of our community, and they have been for a long time. And actually, my dad was part of RAMI too, mind you, and I actually didn't know they'd partnered with the Murray Valley Centre for so long. Just a quick note, they have their major fundraiser coming up in February, so if everyone could buy a ticket, it's put on by one of our Wodonga local businesses, Wodonga switchboard manufacturers. Peter and Sue Russell, they're the major organiser and been a great supporter of the Murray Valley Centre since then. I also went to the Border Carers Reference Group, and that was just about just showing support for all the carers in our community and making sure that the carers are looked after as well as the people that they're caring for. There's 2.5 million unpaid carers in Australia, and 10% of them are under the age of 25. So often carers get thrown into a situation that they're not trained for, not prepared for, and so as much as we can offer them respite in that as well. I went to Site Disability Services, AGM, which is my favourite, because I got to see this Assemblies dance group. They're a group that have their challenges, and it's part of one of their programs. And to see it it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And I've got a big congratulations to their management team. Actually, they've turned a deficit around into a surplus and showing. And it was by changing some of their policies and procedures and their long-term strategic plan, and they're getting great outcomes from that. I went to Bocag race marquee on Saturday for the Caulfield, and I bring that to attention because I got to listen to a doctor speak who also went to a CBAG presentation. It was the cancer bag. And he said that because of Bocag's fundraising achievements, they've Border Ovarian Cancer Group, which has been run by Heather Watts for a long time now, to last year, which is why I'm mentioning it. But the money that they've donated has gone directly to research. Out of that research, they have now changing the terminology for ovarian cancer from a terminal diagnosis to a chronic illness. And the doctor that spoke, and who's a major professor at Peter Mac, who's also local, when I heard him speak at the CBAG, he'd just come in off the farm with his arm up a cow, is how he presented himself to us. And a non-paid advertisement too. Australian Day is coming up, and our awards, Citizens of the Year, our Young Citizen of the Year, and a Community Organisation of the Year. And we're open for nominations now, and nominations close on December the 2nd. So if you know anyone in our community that does a lot of work, and they all do, they don't want a pat on the back. That's not why people volunteer or do work in the community. But there's plenty of people out there that are deserving of one of these, so please nominate them if you know somebody. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lott. You had a busy time, and attending some of those AGMs is a very special part of our job as councillors, but it's also really important to get that great understanding. But perhaps you'll put your bingo lady on for a special mention at the Australia Day Awards. Councillor Bennett.
Just a quick note of thanks and congratulations. Over the weekend, it was the 85th anniversary of the emergency landing of the Iver, and the Iver Memorial, the Iver Community Memorial Trust put on a fantastic event, which Councillor Mitchell went to, and they raised lots of money for their restoration project. So it's just critical for groups like this to keep these stories alive and make sure that generations to come remember that amazing, remarkable story. On Sunday, I hosted Her Excellency, the Ambassador to the Netherlands, out at Bongilla, where there's a special Dutch exhibition as well. So big thanks to that committee, who have obviously just been working really tirelessly to make sure our community doesn't forget such a remarkable story. And also, lastly, we've got our community forum coming up in about 2 weeks' time. So I know we've got a few people on the agenda, but please, if you've got any issues with council or ideas or suggestions, please register for that one and come along for that.
Thank you. No one else? Councillors, I'd just like to recognise, and I've been dying to do this all night, we've actually got some Japanese visitors in our town. At the moment, I hosted them this afternoon. They're actually visitors to our schools, and they are from the area of their city is called Gamagori. I apologise if I've not said that correctly, but we do have a lovely letter from the mayor over there. 2 years ago, I met with a whole bunch of students that were over. We have a reciprocal relationship, so some of our students actually get to go over. We've got 14 Japanese students here and a host of teachers, and also people from the Municipal Board of Education in Japan. So I spent just over an hour with them this afternoon, taking them through parts of our city and talking about our city, and particularly talking about our young people. So I just wanted to recognise them. So Yoshi and Koji, thank you very much for your time today, and it was an absolute pleasure to have you here. But in November, I know that our students are going over to Japan, and what a fantastic cultural experience that they have, and then bring back further knowledge. Councillors, if there is no further general business, item 15 is urgent business, of which there is none. 16, question time. There is one question. Anyone?
Just one question, Madam Mayor. It's from Mike Fraser. I'll read out the question, but Mike, thank you for your question, and we will take it on notice and get back to you. I think our people in the audience will perhaps understand why. It's a technical question, so we'll take our time and come back with the correct answer. But I'll read it for you all. The 2018-19 financial accounts include contributions, monetary income of $1,492,000. The original budget had an amount of $225,000 for this item, and the 2019 budget has a forecast of $858,000. Whilst $149,000 of the income has been identified as carryover reserve amount in the re-budget report submitted tonight, the remaining balance of somewhere between $400,000 and $1.2 million has not been included in the remaining variances/savings identified in the agenda report. Could you explain why? I also note that the breakdown of the 1.048 million of savings does not include any variations on capital projects. Does this mean that every capital project in the 25 million programme has come in on forecast, or has it had its remaining spend carried over into the 2019-2020 budget? So thank you for your question. We'll come back to you in writing, Mike. Thanks.
Thank you. Item 17 is confidential business, of which there is none. There's no urgent confidential business. So that leaves me to close the meeting, and then we'll go to our YAS Awards. We're going to have a new process, but a couple of things I wanted to recognise before I close the meeting tonight. Firstly, we'll be back in our chamber next month, which I'm delighted by, because it's a much nicer experience for anybody in the gallery, and also for us as councillors, because we're closer to the community. And secondly, I just wanted to make note that it is exactly 1 year today of this council term left. Goes very quickly. So worthy of note. So I will see everybody on November 18 in our chamber over in our main building. And that leaves me to close tonight's meeting. Thank you.